Talk. And today we have a bonus feature for you today. We were able to talk with Dad with a Phone, Michael Dalton. He lives in Woodland Park, Colorado, and he took time out of his busy day to talk with us about his experience of living in a small town, Woodland Park, where there's a high-profile national televised murder going on. And he was able to sit in the courtroom, see the trial of Patrick Frazee. And I think it was interesting to listen to him talk about his experience, first time seeing a trial kind of from the beginning to the end. And I think it's worth your time. I hope you enjoy it. Check him out on YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok. It's Dad with a Phone. Have a great day. I hope you enjoy it. So we are joined today with Michael Dalton. He has a website called Dad with a Phone, and he's also known as the Woodland Park Underground. Michael, thanks for joining us, taking the time to speak with us.
Hey, man, thanks for having me on. It's an honor and a pleasure to be on with YouTube's world-famous lawyer. So I love it.
The pleasure is all mine. Thank you for taking the time. And obviously the reason we really wanted to talk with you, and thanks for agreeing to this, is you had a front row seat in the Patrick Frazee trial. Not only do you live down there, but you went to the courthouse on a daily basis. And apparently you were really getting the district attorney fired up about your post. So why don't you just give me a quick bio, give me a quick introduction, and tell me how this whole Patrick Frazee thing came about.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, it was December, I think it was like December 1st, 2018. You have to understand, I've been in Woodland Park about 10 years. I live just down the street from Kelsey Barrett's condos, or where she resided in her house at. And for the last 5 years, I had the Woodland Park Underground that talked about local news, stuff going on in town, deer crossing the road to the parade, to the football game. And have quite a following from locals talking about hot subjects, political subjects in town. And so I think it was December 1st, December 2nd, someone sent me a message that said, "Hey, Michael, what do you know about this missing girl in town?" And I didn't know much other than I had seen a Facebook post or a report or something, just, little random stuff. I didn't really pay attention. I hadn't followed any true crime. And people go missing in Colorado all the time, and turn out they just ran off with someone. So I didn't really grasp it right away. But nevertheless, I started looking into it, and over the next 3 or 4 days, I realized that this was going to take on a life of its own. I first realized it at the very first press conference that they had at the city council chambers. Now, I go to city council meetings on a weekly, bi-weekly basis. I'm actually running for city council. That's a plug.
That's all right.
I have been in this building 100 times. And when I drove up to this little council chambers, there were 30 news crews out front, cameras everywhere. So much so they had the doors locked and didn't let anyone in. I snuck around back, and I work in the AV, camera, video world, worked on movies, different things. So I have camera equipment. So I took all my camera equipment around back, snuck in the back door, went into chambers, set my camera up, and the cops started coming in. And I was actually live streaming on Facebook Live. And the cops come in. I know all the cops. I'm talking to them. Like, what the crap's going on, man? This is the biggest thing I've ever seen here. I've been here 10 years. And we had a lot of stuff here back in the day when the Texas 7 came through Woodland Park. But this was a big news story, and I knew it was taking on a life of its own. So I just started following it, and then all of a sudden my local following, local viewership exploded into all 4 corners of the earth, and people were messaging me all over the place following this case. And I had seen Making a Murderer. I had seen the Netflix shows. Sure. I was like, this is happening right in front of us. Like it's going down right here. I don't have to turn on Netflix. We're going to watch a murder trial happen here. We're going to watch this missing person thing. So
yeah, you get to watch it in real time.
Yeah, real time and real crazy, dramatic kind of. I mean, it wasn't your normal case. And so that's kind of how I really just fell into the true crime world. I have a passion for it. I'm addicted to it. I mean, everybody likes seeing this stuff unfold on television. When you are sitting in a 100-year-old courtroom and there's a murder suspect and a jury and DAs and it's exciting. It's draining. I didn't realize how draining, like emotionally, it would be. It's good. Nice stuff.
Yeah, so you really got involved in this when, like I said, the first press conference, you figured, wow, this is something that's going to be big. Were you, did you start kind of blogging at that point, and saying, here's what's going on, Patrick Frazee is a suspect? I mean, were you following close?
I would, well, because the world was watching, right? And so they would move faster than me. I would get a message that says FBI's at Kelsey's house. Come on, no, they're not. No, they're not. They already went. They already looked. It's a missing girl. The FBI. All right, let's drive down there and see. Holy crap, the FBI's at Kelsey's house. And I'm sitting there. And that's what I think. I think that's what captivated. It's not I'm some special. I got some sort of personality that's so special that it could have been anybody. It was the fact that I was right there. Yeah. I could drive down the street. If they said something was going on, I would check it out. And that's what happened with a lot of the things. Somebody said, oh, she went to Sonic, Crystal Lee Kinney. And if you know the story, she went to, so all of a sudden I start contacting people that I know that work at Sonic, and we were able to even get video of the actual Sonic video, or I'd take my drone out and I was flying my drone over Sheila Frazee's place. We got it early on tip through another channel that you've had Jay's for Justice on your show. Jay calls me up and is like, hey, I got a text from somebody that says the FBI want to search their property out in Guffey, Colorado. And we found Reisch Ranch, and this was all through internet sleuthing. This was all through people, digging and contacting whoever they could contact. And sure enough, she sent me the email. The Nash Ranch is owned by a conglomerate of people that own a little bit of property here and there, but it's a combined, and then they lease that combined property out. So like cattle ranchers like Patrick. And so we got permission to even go out on the Nash Ranch, got the gate codes, went out there. Now, I didn't know what we were looking for because we didn't have the story. This was all before pre-trial. This was all before we even got to the court. 4 a.m. in the morning, somebody texted me on my golden stitches. I know everybody from the mayor's wife to the homeless person in Woodland Park. I made an effort to go in and meet business owners and commune through town with the people. And so I got a message that said, hey, they're going to start looking at this. And this was before it was a murder case. It was a missing person. And they said, they're going to make an arrest. There's a girl involved. They're going out to Patrick's. And this was 4 a.m. in the morning that Patrick got arrested. And when I looked at it, I told my wife, I'm laying in bed. I'm like, should I get up? I'm not going to get up. Should I get up? And I kind of put the phone down, went back to sleep, and then my phone just blew up. They just arrested Patrick Frazee, And so the information was coming in not only from locals, but then people that don't even live here that were being connected to this, Idaho. Yeah. And then people started reaching out to me, actually. I didn't really reach out to anyone, but I talked to Pam Klein. Clint Klein was interviewed on the Dateline special that came out about the Kelsey Barrett case, and but his wife knew Patrick. Started talking to Patrick's friends, and then all of a sudden I did some interviews with Kelsey's friends, people who had been with Kelsey just a few days before at a rodeo with Patrick or whatever. And so I started just like everybody, fallen in love with this mother, this woman who was taken away. And I don't mean falling in love in a weird way, just being captivated by this mother's story.
No, it's real life drama.
What's happening? So
yeah. I mean, it's real life drama, and you get to, experience it, real time. And, that's kind of, my daily life. You're dealing with these things, you hire investigators to go out, you're going out yourself to look at stuff. And sometimes you don't know exactly what you're looking for, but I'm a firm believer most cases don't hang on some great legal issue. And as you probably saw from the Patrick Frazee trial, there was no smoking gun legal brief that was going to be filed that was going to make his case go away. It came down to who can find the best facts. And obviously the prosecution found more and came up with more, obviously, since they had Crystal Lee Kenny. But no, I completely get it. And, it's like, you just want to know, like, what's going to happen next and next. So.
Well, and that's what we started. And that's where, I think that's where we pushed the buttons a little bit of the DA. And I'm kind of one of those guys that's always pushed the system a little bit. My dad is 49 years in law enforcement. So I grew up with a law enforcement dad. He retired from 3 agencies, federal, state, city agencies. He's been an investigator for big DA's office and different things. And so I know that I have it kind of bred in me, this investigation stuff.
Sure.
But I never wanted to be a cop or go down that road. But when it was sparked in my own little town, everything was accessible. Even the stuff that they came up with, some of the stuff they came up with, I had pointed out, but I had no idea it was going to be used. Like, I remember driving by one day and going, oh, look, there's 3 cameras on the log cabin furniture store. And that's the same block that, Kelsey. And when it really struck home for me is when I went back and looked at my own live videos on the Woodland Park Underground. And I had done a live video Thanksgiving Day, driving to, we were going to Thanksgiving dinner at some friend's house, and we drove right past Kelsey's house on Thanksgiving Day at 12:30.
Wow.
She would then pull in that same route 8 minutes later. And so, like, I have a live video from Thanksgiving where I drive right past the condos where there's about to be a horrific crime go down. At 4:30, we left that Thanksgiving dinner, and we drove that same road home. And at about 4:36, between 4:30 and 4:50, Patrick leaves Kelsey's house after committing the murder. And so I was right there. And when I registered that in my mind, when I started thinking about this, these are the same streets my kids walked to the library on. The UPass Cultural Center, where Crystal Lee Kenny came and parked her car and walked up to the house to clean up after Patrick. That UPass Cultural Center, my kids walk through that parking lot on a weekly, bi-weekly basis, going to the parks and stuff. And so it hit home real quickly when details from court started coming. And it got so crazy that it was literally taking every day of my life up. Every day I was talking about Patrick and the Patrick Frazee case. I was talking about Kelsey Barrett. When the news of Crystal Lee and all of that story came out, it exploded even more. And so it's funny because I built relationships with news media that I would see on a weekly basis.
Sure.
Built relationship, good or bad or indifferent, with law enforcement around the place. And then there were a few times in the actual courtroom where they said my name. And when your name gets mentioned in a murder trial, all of a sudden you're like, oh, crap, are you too close? What have you done? How's this going to play out?
Yeah, did the police ever come and interview you at all about information you had?
I interviewed with the district attorney investigator. So everybody knows this story if you watch Dad with the Phone. If you've never watched Dad with the Phone, you can go find this story on one of my channels somewhere. I actually spent the night in jail with Patrick Frazee. And through some circumstances, I ended up in the Teller County Jail. And when I walked into the jail, the very first person I literally saw was Patrick Frazee. he was being held in the booking area on suicide watch. So he was in a suicide watch under 24-hour surveillance. And when they were booking me in, he was actually out in the booking area watching TV.
Yeah.
And the case had already started. We were already full fleeing into stuff. The pre-trials motion hearings had already started going on. And so here I am finding myself in jail, which nobody should be happy of. I'm never ashamed of it because people go to jail every day. And so I'm walking into jail, and I should be upset. But as soon as I walked in, I see Patrick Frazee. I start thinking like a content guy. And I'm like, oh my gosh,
how do I record
I'm right
this?
here in front of the dude, And so, I mean, the story. I do a whole long video about how I survived the night in jail with Patrick Frazee, and at some point in that video, me and Patrick had some eye-to-eye contact. We weren't in the same cell together, but we could see each other. And I was actually wearing one of my Woodland Park Underground hoodies. And I start pointing out my logo going, you know who I am, right? You know who I am? I'm at every one of your trials. We got to talk. And so we're having this verbal, non-verbal stuff through the glass.
Yeah.
And the investigators were wanting to know what we talked about. And now later, there was other criminals that talked to Patrick, and we get all kinds of info. So I understand why I got listed as a witness, but I never got called to testify.
Yeah, everything that I saw about, Patrick Frazee, he always looked like a cool, calm customer. I mean, he was pretty chill. Did you ever see any look of nervousness or anything on his face? Because all the pictures, whether coming in and out of the courthouse itself or right out of the courtroom, he just looked like, I got this. No worries.
Yeah, cold, stone-faced. The only time two times I saw emotion from Patrick Frazee, when his brother testified against him and when the sentence came down, and when they were about to sentence him. But I think that's telltale of like a true psychopath. And I think after listening to the stories of his common and casual conversation with people saying, I know how to make a body disappear. No body, no crime. These are things that his friends, like people he called friends, people that he spent a lot of time with, this is what his friends said he said. This wasn't some, they went searching, and there were people that testified in his court that didn't want to be there. There was another girlfriend. He had Crystal. He had, on the day that he killed Kelsey, he texted Crystal, Kelsey, and another girl that he was trying to date and hook up with.
And as we know, they didn't know anything about each other for quite a while. It wasn't until the end that they did that. Did girlfriend number 3 know about, mother of the baby?
Yeah, she knew about mother of the baby because she knew about the baby. And one of the text messages that they played in court, read in court, was that he texted her on the day after, I think, Thanksgiving, the day after the murder. He texted her and said, hey, there's going to be some things that I got to figure out, but we're going to have more time together. Like, he's texting that to the girlfriend the day after he killed his baby's mom.
Yeah.
And so, he was in his own mind, had made up this imaginary. And listen, I made a lot of comments during this thing because the news came out that Patrick Frazee's brother was a homicide detective in Colorado Springs. And so I was like, man, if you want to get away with murder, and probably should talk to a homicide detective. And Patrick Frazee's brother was with him on Thanksgiving. He was with him when he picked up the phone, when they did they did a welfare check to make sure Kaylee was okay. And they also picked up Patrick Frazee's phone down at a Five Guys burger place, or a smash burger or something. And Patrick Frazee's brother was with him. So even on some of my lives, I'm going, I mean, they say that they're not together, they're not friends, but they're together on these times. He's a homicide detective. This guy's saying no body, no crime. He got these ideas from somewhere, and so it was weird to me in that little time, especially because his brother wasn't talking a lot. They weren't doing any media and stuff. But when his brother got up and testified, his brother made a very noticeable eye roll during the testimony at him, glare at him, and Patrick would just continue to look down. Patrick in the court was, like you said, cold, stone-faced, looking down, stuff like that.
So obviously, the trial wasn't televised, so you literally had a front row seat, and we would watch. People would tweet when they would come out, or media reports and things like that. Was this the first trial you had ever really sat in on from beginning to end?
Well, yeah, it's the first time I ever seen the legal system, and you've seen it 100,000 times, however many times you've been in the courtroom, but it happened so quickly. I mean, it happened year to year. So it was like the crime happened November 22nd, 2018. He was convicted and sentenced before the end of the calendar year. Not a calendar year, but a full year. And so to see that play out, to see how slow or how fast things can go, I'm sure you've had trials that have lasted 3-4 years.
Oh yeah.
And so in this thing, it was, and then to see the defense, everybody speculated the defense is going to get up there and rip Crystal's story apart,
Yeah.
And it was almost like, they just let them present and really didn't, they objected to a few things, but it was real minor stuff. And it wasn't this Perry Mason trial where the defense, throws out an alibi or throws out, they actually testified about Patrick's alibi drive and the alibi drive notes and stuff. And so it was weird. And we were getting the story from someone who was actively involved in the murder. So everybody was like, how much of her story is true? How much of this is made up? How much is she lying about? How much was she involved with? And that's where I think all the speculation and questions, because the story they told us, when that story, actually during the pre-trial, because I have to pay the bills, my wife actually went to pre-trial. And she was sitting in the courtroom, and that's the first time we heard a version of Crystal's story that came through Greg Slater's affidavit. That pre-trial, they told us everything.
Yeah.
And, at the pre-trial, they made it clear, hey, there can be some hearsay info that comes out. There's going to be some hearsay things.
Yeah, at the preliminary hearing, hearsay is permitted, because they normally just put the lead detective up who, prepared the affidavit, is familiar with the case, and he just gives a general overview of this is what the evidence is, this is what people say. You don't get to actually see the witnesses, but yeah, so hearsay is in fact admissible at preliminary hearings.
Yeah, so when that happened, we're all listening to this story, and Greg Slater even says it from the stand. He's like, this wasn't a linear story or a logical story she told us. But they still kind of went with it. And then all of a sudden, when the trial happens and you start seeing things that corroborate her story, you're like, oh my goodness, maybe this girl, and I'm a religious guy, and there's an old proverb that says, the truth will set you free. And I'm like, if she actually told the truth, she might get set free on this thing because of the way that they charged her and the plea deal that she made.
Oh yeah, she got a smoking deal.
What?
She got a smoking good deal.
A smoking deal. Have you ever got a deal that good for somebody? Is what I want to know.
We have. Sometimes it just depends. Her attorney, I've known her forever. She was a public defender in Denver for years, and she's a very, very good attorney. And I'm telling you, she gave her clients some good advice, like, let's go in, let's cut a deal, and get out. But obviously, she must have been truthful with her attorney, so she knew what she was dealing with. To say, oh yeah, let's get a deal. And they were like, yeah, an F6, bam, done. It's taken it.
No.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, if you pawn a stolen item, you do more of a crime. You defraud a pawnbrokers of F5 in this state.
Yeah. If you're a felon with a gun, it's an F6. I mean, that's the equivalent. I mean, she got a smoking good deal. And yeah, it was in the aggravated range. 3 years. Like I said, Crystal Lee Kenny, hopefully she paid her bill to her attorney because she got her money's worth right there. The fact that she's going to get out of prison.
Yeah, and Dan May said it in the press conference after they get the sentencing hearing with her was she will probably walk into jail and have her time cut in half because of just good time and credits.
Yeah.
And so that 3 years turns into a year and a half. And then Dan May goes on to say, he says, I'm actually fighting legislation right now up in Denver because if some things go through, she could actually get additional credits and she may only serve 9 months in jail.
Yeah. Most people don't realize this. And sometimes, unless it's a crime of violence where you have to serve a mandatory 75% before you're eligible for parole, here in Colorado, you're technically eligible for parole at 50%. But the prisons are full and they have to save it for the people that are there for violent crimes that are never going to leave. So they got somebody with an F6. She'll probably serve about 30% of her sentence, and she'll probably be sent to a halfway house, prior to that, where she gets to go live in the community and work and, she's still in custody technically, but she gets to go live, in basically a dorm type situation at a halfway house. So yeah, she'll serve even on a 3-year sentence. Man, 9 months. I agree. 9 months.
Well, and that's what Dan said. He's like, we're trying to fight this legislation, but like he even estimated 25-30% right there with you. And man, my wife was sitting behind me at that press conference. We were right there, feet away, and like she visibly gasped. She's like, "What?" And he went on to explain that he had just had somebody that they had prosecuted and sentenced to 10 years, and that guy got out in a year and a half. And so it's not only is it on paper shows up that way, like you said, overcrowding, other people in front of you that are spending more time in jail on mandatory minimums. They're going to be the ones that go to prison. I don't know if this will happen because Teller County is such a small jail, but I even she may spend all her time in county jail. They may not even transfer her for a few months in prison time. They may do it because she's high profile and get her out of the county jail. But
yeah, she'll have to be transferred to DOC. So she'll go to one of the women's facilities, either up here in Denver or I think there's one down in Pueblo.
Pueblo,
as well.
Canyon City, I think around that area.
But the women facilities are Pueblo and Denver. They've got a big old fancy women's facility up here. You mentioned, Teller County. I've been to that courthouse several times in my career. I mean, I know we've shown pictures of it, but it's an old historic courthouse, and I can't remember if it's built like 1903 or if it was like 1863. I mean, it's old, but like you said, I love going to the old courthouses because they have so much character. And you go into the courtrooms and they got you walk into the Teller County Courthouse and it has, the original hardwood floors that are creaky and they're sagging. And you go into the courtrooms and, it's the same courtroom when the place was built. You can imagine some, miner being prosecuted for stealing, somebody's donkey or their gold or something, or, silver.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's just so interesting to go to those old courthouses. I wish the walls could talk.
I thought they were going to move it because of that, right? I thought for sure they're going to move this trial to Durango or something, not because of the old courthouse, but because he was in there. So I was but that thing is it's a museum. It should be a museum. As a matter of fact, The jail, the original jail that's across the street, just diagonal from the courthouse, built at the same time and was functional up until 1992. And it was deemed inhumane. That jail was deemed inhumane, and they had to close that jail down. That jail is a museum. That courthouse should be a museum. Not only the creaky floors, the hand-etched radiators that are around the building. These radiators that have been hand-etched, they're artwork. It's pieces of art. The hand-etched glass, that's the original glass that's in the doors and different things. A lot of stuff that was crazy. We would be in the middle of court and a truck would drive by and court would just be put on hold because you couldn't hear because the windows had to be open, and so there is a ton about the courthouse. Now, I was proud of Dan May. I wish he would have gone the extra step, but Dan May was able to get I don't know if it was him, but he definitely pushed some stuff through. He got a new projector system put in the courtroom. He got a new sound system put in the courtroom. I thought they should have put a new camera system in the courtroom. Little robotic cameras would not have been obtrusive. They could have placed them in the right places that they wouldn't have seen the jury. They could have protected witnesses and all of that stuff. I just feel in a day and age where a dad with the phone can have a television station that broadcasts around the world, our courtroom should be outfitted. I
am totally with you on that. I mean, there's no way that they could not have accommodated media in the courtroom where they have a live feed going on. It happens in courtrooms, all over the country. It happens when they get a high profile case and the judge is like, okay, we'll give it, we'll allow it. And I didn't think the judge articulated well enough why expanded media coverage wasn't appropriate in this particular case.
I think there was a couple of things. One, that first day that Patrick was walking up to court where they actually allowed us to have cell phones running live feeds. There's a picture that went on the Denver Post where I'm standing there behind Patrick holding a phone, and that's kind of where Dad with the phone was even birthed and thought about. I'm on the Denver Post. You got Patrick escorted by two guards, and then I'm in the background holding my phone. What you don't see is 50 other people that are in that corridor, and you've been there, so you know that there's no sally port, there's no way to get a defendant into the courtroom without bringing them through the public. And so a lot of the modern courthouses are connected to the jails. They don't have to walk guys through with shackles into the courtroom where the public is. They all come through secure areas. I understand that the Teller County Jail is not set up to bring defendants into the courtroom except through the public eye and through that stuff. And so even though as much as I'm a content creator, as much as I would love to be able to live stream right there from the courtroom like we did a couple of times before they put this decorum order, it was pretty evident that this is going to be a circus if they don't get this under control. Yeah. And so I understood that. Now, they went above and beyond because it didn't make them happy that Twitter came involved. When you can live tweet during a court in the courtroom with your phone, it's just like taking notes. You're not being disruptive. You're not making a lot of noise. Yeah. But you're sending out information faster than anyone can capture. They can't get a hold of it. They can't control it. And so I do understand they try to control that information as much as they can. I just think they're going to have to rewrite the rules at some point. They're going to have to rewrite how this works because of technologies. Well,
years ago, I mean, I would go into like most people today, you have your calendar on your phone or your iPad. The federal courthouse, I think it was maybe 5-6 years ago, you still couldn't take your phone in the courtroom because they didn't allow, phones and cameras, this crazy new technology. What are people going to do? They're going to record the proceedings or what have you. And, now it's just commonplace. Judges are like, oh, hold on, let me check my calendar on my phone. The rules need to catch up. And, it's a public courthouse. So why, can't we, videotape? And I get it. You don't want people being intimidated if they're witnesses and things like that. But, guess what? Welcome to the world of you're a witness in a homicide trial. You may not have asked to be there, but, it's kind of your public duty to do it. And, I'm just a firm believer that, it's a public courtroom. People need to be able to see what's going on. Obviously, you all could sit there and take notes. But, it's frustrating that in a case like this that they couldn't do a live feed because, like you said, they could have put a GoPro camera up in the corner and no one would have known it was there. Let me ask you. Go ahead.
Again, they have cameras in that court. There is video of that entire trial. There's like at least 3 security cameras up, and they have audio. And I know for a fact that those files exist. Now, it's probably under a different category because it's not official like court. I think it's more security-based camera stuff. And so I wonder about that because they do have video in that courtroom the entire time, but it was more from a security camera angle. And there's 2 or 3 security cameras in that courtroom. But I think it was more about they had to control the narrative, I know. And they did control the narrative, allowing what could be. They even went as far as to say, you can't even live video on the sidewalk in front of the courtroom. You have to walk, or a courthouse, you have to walk across the street. They extended the decorum to the other side of the street. Yeah. And the judge, Judge Sales, already has a reputation. Before he came to Teller County, this was his first trial, in Teller County, as far as, I'm sure he did some more throughout the year, picked up a docket, but when Patrick Frazee started, he had a different judge.
Yeah,
and then
I recall that.
Yeah.
They rotate around because they're same judicial district, so they kind of rotate who gets to go to Teller.
Yeah, and so this was his kind of first one, and there is still, I talked to people that have had to deal with Judge Sales and custody battles. Judge Sales has a hard-nosed approach to his judging. People think he should retire, whatever, but he was strict. And while I was there, I got escorted out of the courthouse twice. I saw a producer from Dateline NBC get escorted out of the courthouse. I saw a a news reporter get escorted out of the courthouse for violating the decorum order. So I know, and I didn't violate the decorum order. I got escorted. I don't know why I got escorted. I tried to get answers. I still couldn't get answers. They don't have to answer anything either, which is crazy.
Yeah, no, they'll never tell you. Let me ask you this. The jury, and not a lot of people have talked about it. And obviously, I don't know if you know any of the jurors. I know 2 of the jurors. Okay.
And they both refused to talk to me. Yeah,
no, I get it. They don't have to talk with anybody. But, obviously it's when you're sitting there, you're watching, as an attorney, you're trying to think, what are the jurors thinking? Sometimes people just telegraph it and oh yeah, they're with us or they're not buying what we're selling. Did you think the jury was, convinced? Obviously they didn't deliberate very long. So obviously
the jury was on top of it. Yeah. I thought the jury asked better. That was one thing that I learned. I didn't know the jury got to ask questions of the witnesses. Yeah. I wasn't aware of that.
That's very unique in the criminal justice system. It started, maybe 10 years ago. It was kind of a pilot project here in Colorado where jurors get to ask questions. They don't get to rehash the case, but it's supposed to be clarifying questions. And I remember when it first came out, defense attorneys were like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. This is terrible. And when I was in the Marine Corps, the members of the jury got to ask a question. They got to ask questions. And so I was like, no big deal. And, the jurors, you're like, they paying attention. This is the most important thing they've probably ever done in their life, let alone, a homicide case. They take it very seriously. And sometimes the juror will ask questions. The attorneys will all approach. The judge will look at it and they'll ask, do you object or not object? Or they'll rephrase it. And then the judge will ask the question to the witness and what have you. But sometimes those jurors ask really good questions. You're like, wow, I didn't think of that. and you've been eating,
No, they absolutely
sleeping, breathing the case.
There was a couple of questions they asked of every witness. They asked something, and I think except maybe the family, they didn't ask any questions of the family. But there was a couple of times when they asked questions where you were like, man, that should be I thought the defense would be asking those questions, because they were asking clarifications on some pictures during the when they were adjourned for sentencing. They actually called that they wanted to see a particular video or a particular photo, and then that's where like the lawyers, they kind of argued back and forth, and they were like, well, we can only show it to them twice. Like, they wanted to see a particular video, and they were like, we only want them to see it twice. And they were like that. The judge was like, yeah, that's fine. Or we want them to see this picture, but they can only see it once as a group, and then the picture, they can't look at it again during the deliberations. And so there was this time that even when they asked to see, they asked to see the photo where Patrick is entering or exiting. It was just a photo from Arlo cameras where he has something in his hand. And the prosecutors tried to convey that was the actual tote that Patrick was carrying. To me, it didn't look like the tote, but the jurors wanted to see that picture again during sentencing, and I feel like that was when they asked to see that, all this speculation as there, everybody going, what's going to happen? Are they trying to? It was all hinging on this tote, because they were pointing at. They didn't have a body, so the tote became the body, and anywhere the tote went, it was referred to as the tote, but it was understood that was Kelsey's body, and so that tote, the pictures of it and things became very important to the jury, because without that body, the prosecutor was pointing, that's your body, there's the body, that's what you need to understand.
Yeah.
And that was something that I learned. Dan May stepping up. So I have some lawyer friends in Colorado Springs, and even the press. We were like, it was all under speculation, even though Dan May was kind of showing up. They were like, he doesn't try cases anymore. He doesn't do this stuff very much. In the Patrick Frazee case, some of the arguments that came out, it was Dan May that I felt gave the best arguments and the best emotion. And you can tell this was the most experienced DA in the room, even with this team of DAs. And so it was interesting to watch him, flow through this case. When at the beginning we were thinking, oh, it's going to be Veman and there's another lady, the red hair lady, I don't know her name, that are going to try this case. But to see Dan May work, especially at sentencing, he kind of acted out this real dramatic, not reenactment, but he counted the blows, like with his hands, and he counted like 13 times that the experts said, with the amount of blood that was in the apartment, that Patrick had to have hit Kelsey more than 13 or 14 times, and he counted out every blow, and even tears shed. This emotion behind the DA, I've never seen that before. Even in like stuff we've seen on TV, I've never seen DAs get real emotional, but every one of the DAs showed emotion during this trial, and so I think that they definitely did their job. Now, Crystal Kenny's situation, I don't know.
Yeah, well, sometimes, they got to make a deal with the devil, so to speak, to get the ultimate, person responsible. And, they'll probably have regrets, but the way I understood it was that they thought that she was important, but they didn't realize how important she was when they cut the deal. So, like I said, hats off to her attorney.
Cut the deal.
Drew Nielsen.
Before they ever heard her story.
Yeah.
Before they had
there was no case without her.
Yeah. And that's a scary thing to think about. That Patrick Frazee was one blonde away from getting away with a perfect murder. Because had he done the cleanup, let's say he had done the cleanup without her, which he could have very easily done.
Yeah.
He could have done that cleanup. And had he done that, he may have never been caught. It's always, in my opinion, that Crystal Lee planned this thing. that she was the one who pushed this. It's in my opinion because we found out in trial that Crystal Lee had been pregnant with one of Patrick's babies.
Yeah.
She had aborted that baby. And then Patrick had a baby with Kelsey. And it's in my opinion, that was the motive from Crystal. And I don't think she talked Patrick into it, but I think when they planned it and the very hours that they show on the cell phone alone, this doesn't even include the hours they could have spent talking face to face, but they actually showed hours of conversations leading up to the murder of Kelsey Barrett with Crystal. And you're like, they're planning this thing on the cell phone.
Yeah. When they charged her with solicitation of, or I'm sorry, when they charged Patrick Frazee with solicitation of murder to Crystal Lee Kenny to go kill her, that's not a solicitation. That was a conspiracy to commit first-degree murder.
Conspiracy.
Because she was going to go do it on, the 3 occasions, but she chickened out and didn't do it. So, I mean, they made their charging decisions. They have to live with it. But, it is what it is. And, she realized, she's obviously smart enough to realize I got to save myself here. No,
it was that other tall blonde lawyer who was smart enough.
Drew. Yeah.
What's her name? I don't know her name.
Drew.
Drew, are you going to get an interview with her?
No, I haven't talked. I saw her the other day in the parking garage. And I didn't even click. It was just like, hey, how you doing? We were both running late. So,
you got to take advantage of that.
Well, she couldn't talk about the case even if she wanted to. So
they can't ever talk, even though the DAs talked. They can't ever talk.
Yeah, because it would be attorney-client information, or she'd have to get permission from her client, which I doubt that she would, but wouldn't be able to. What did you think of the defense attorneys? I mean, they were younger public defenders. Did you think they did okay with what they had to work with?
I did a lot of search on the defense attorney when they first got appointed, and that defense attorney's the public defender. I don't know his name off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't recall either.
But he had been, he's a pretty experienced public defender. This isn't like his first rodeo in there. And so at first I thought for sure they handpicked that public defender. Again, early on, I tried to give Patrick the benefit of the doubt. When I was sitting in the courtroom the first time with him and was looking over at him as a father, I'm like, that guy's either a dad and he's getting ramrodded, patsied into this thing, or he's a monster, And when we heard Crystal's story, it was just unbelievable. It just wasn't believable.
And sometimes, but that's what people don't get in the general public is, I've said you can't make this stuff up. And after 25 years of doing this, every time I think, I've heard it all, I get a case and I read something like, wow, why would they have thought that was a good idea? Or, wow, that's pretty, the stuff. I've had people tell me the most bizarre stories. And I'm like, oh, no way. That didn't happen. No way. And then you're like, oh, my God, they're telling me exactly what happened. You think in a million years, couldn't have happened that way. It's life. The craziest things happen. And, all that stuff. I was wondering on, those crime shows growing up, how do they come up with these? These writers are so good. And no, they're real stories. They literally just changed the names and, maybe change the hometowns, but it's all real because you can't make this stuff up. And I think that's why it's so intriguing to people to try and figure it out. And in today's world, everybody can, for lack of a better term, become part of the act, so to speak.
Yeah, I was talking about this morning even. And I think over the next 10 years, I think we're going to see this happen right in front of us, that cases will be solved faster on social media than law enforcement ever will in the next 10 years. I think as facial recognition software turns into an app, just like I have the Shazam app on my phone, and I can listen to a song, I can push the Shazam app on, and it tells me what song it is. There's going to come a time when I point, and there's apps now, I can point at a product and a picture of a product, and all of a sudden all this information comes up about that product. There's going to come a time when that facial recognition software is on our phone and we're going to be able to point it at somebody and get their information.
Well,
and as I've been playing a game with my followers, I'll go eat somewhere. I've been doing it while I've traveled up here in Denver. Like the other day, I was at my brother's bar. My brother's bar is downtown. It's been there since before Colorado was a state. In 1873, it was established. And I took one picture of a picture in the bar, and I was like, tell me where I'm at. And within 10 minutes, my followers on a live video were able to tell me where I was at. Yesterday, did it at another place I was eating. 6 minutes they were, and these are people like in Alabama, Texas, all over the world, being able to use their Googler, search areas, and find that same picture, that picture. And so as with true crime stuff as video, like the Gannon, that's another case. Gannon's case down in Colorado Springs.
Yeah.
Like that video of him, people are going to be able to look at that, begin to recognize things and stuff. I think it's going to happen quicker and quicker.
It's all the phones. I mean, that's what it boils down to. There's so much data that is collected here, and not just from the phone, but they can go to third-party carriers. I was at a CLE just recently, and you know that it's always capturing, but the phone is recording. Like, so if you drive down the street and it says, "Oh, you want to connect to this Wi-Fi," even if you don't know it, it's collecting that data, so they can literally show, "Oh, you circled the block. Oh, they went here and they did this. I had this in a bank robbery case recently," and they just tracked it based upon people's phones. And not that I'm telling people to go commit crimes, but you do, my God, you better not take the phone with you, because they can put you pretty darn close to where it is. All the information that comes in from third-party providers and those apps, the photos, it tells you, oh, you're sitting in Denver, Colorado at this location. It's amazing. And that's what, in this case, corroborated Crystal Lee Kenny's information. And that's what DAs, I'm sure you probably saw this. It's not just somebody comes in and says, here's my story. Well, they try to corroborate everything that person says to show that they're being truthful. And obviously with the cell phone data, that's what they did.
Yeah, that was the brilliant thing about this. So she tells this crazy story of her boyfriend beating this woman to death. And then she begins to give little details and that's the thing that always threw me off, was she gives details based on the story that Patrick told her this. And this is where I've always kind of gone, I understand the story she tells, and I understand the story that they corroborated. And they did. They corroborated her story of not coming down till a certain time and this, that, and the other. But they also still state that Kelsey was killed on or about this date and this date. And they give they kind of give this open-ended area.
Yep.
But she gives so much specific details that then become very apparent through cell phone data. But not only that, through other people unassuming, the ranch hands that helped build the fire that Kelsey would be burned in. That them pointing to say that's where the fire is, and then Crystal Lee coming at a different time and saying that's where the fire is at, and they're corroborating these stories. The corroboration of the tote being, and through video footage, how it just was turned a little bit here, turned a little bit there. And, and so it was the Sonic video that was released that is just sickening, because that Sonic video of Crystal was taken just moments after
cleaning up a bloody apartment. Yeah.
And so all this stuff that comes together, and when you saw it come together in court, because at first I'm thinking, damn, Patrick's getting off. I mean, we were making bets on no body, no crime weapon, no like real physical. Now they had some physical evidence, but even the blood evidence was and the DNA evidence was it was either not, it wasn't verifiable, or it was contaminated, or there was a mix of DNA. They had DNA from the old person who lived in the apartment, mixed in with. So there was all this stuff that you're going, how are they going to convict this guy? And then all of a sudden, jailhouse notes. And I thought that I still to this day think Dan May has this guy, and he's like, send him in, he'll get us something, And the guy who testified about the notes and came forward on the Friday during the case, jailhouse notes, a hit list, all this stuff started coming out. But that went along with Patrick's best friend saying, yeah, he's talked about getting rid of bodies before. He's talked about he knows where to hide bodies and stuff like that. And so watching it play out, understanding that they were going to make movies about this, I know for a fact that Oxygen's working on a show, Discovery ID's working on a show, Dateline's done 2 hours on it, maybe 2 hours, and with their first one they did another 30 minutes or something. And so it is definitely a Lifetime movie when you think about the nature of the crime.
Oh my God. This is a Lifetime, this is made for a Lifetime movie for sure. So
yeah.
So what did you take? What was the, sitting through the trials for somebody who, hadn't probably watched a trial from beginning to end? I mean, obviously you saw that it's not like somebody just comes in and here's all the information. It's little pieces, like putting a puzzle together. You get a little piece from this person, a little piece from this person, and then, hopefully at the end, you can actually see what it says. You may not have all the pieces, but you have enough to get beyond, reasonable doubt. What was the thing that you took from it, from somebody that's, from a courtroom observer?
Well, it's tough. It's tough to look at it because this isn't how they all go down, right? That they have cameras watching a lot of courts. And so the one thing that I actually took was how many different perspectives tell a story differently. Like, I'm sitting with professional reporters and I get to read all of their reports and what they're saying, or I'm listening to other people talk. And so when I would go out, we would begin to listen and we'd see the reports from other people and then take what we only saw with our own eyes. We're like, did that really happen? I mean, even with my wife, she's sitting there taking notes and got pages and pages of notes. And she's like, why didn't I write that down if they said that, And so my biggest takeaway was we can all be in the same courtroom listening to the same story and hear entirely different things. And that's what I started wondering about the jury. What are they listening to? What is their perspective that they're seeing? Wow. And so for me, it was interesting because I got to see how people told this story without even having to be verified, right? When Sam Kramer would come out of the courthouse and he would tweet something, there was no way for the general public to verify that except through another reporter hopefully tweeting the same thing, And when I realized that this story was going to be told through Twitter, it blew my mind, by the way. It just was like, no way. And they've sealed so many documents in this thing that they've released some information. Oh, here, you can have these pictures, you can have this. But yeah, we're not going to give you her transcript we're not going to give you that police affidavit. And so my biggest takeaway was video is important for the public in courtrooms. It's important because we have a constitutional right to a public courtroom and an open courtroom. And where media has filled that in the past, the general public can actually fill those same shoes, like me going in, live video, and doing these things. It's good and bad watching this thing because, one, I thought our court system was broken. I don't know if it's broken. It still worked. I still think they got the right guy, but it feels like it's archaic. It's just old. And I believe that hopefully that we begin to reform those things, like you said, catch up with the new technologies, and even maybe look at the way things are worked out, because this one was that close. He was that close to getting away.
Yep.
Because it was that. If they didn't have Crystal Story, Dan has said it, the DAs have said it, we had to make a deal with the devil to get this thing done, and they didn't realize how big of a devil she was. It's encouraging. At the same time, it's discouraging watching, So
yeah. Well, I'm a firm believer. There's a quote that says, the American judicial system is absolutely terrible, but it's still the best in the world. I agree with that. I said it, I think, once or twice, and people from around the world were like, you don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, I think we try. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. But I think it's still pretty darn fair to lots of people. Are there mistakes made? You betcha. But I think we try to correct them the best we can. And, to make it a public trial, speedy trial, 6 months from the date you say not guilty. That case moved pretty fast for a first degree murder case. And frankly, murder cases that I've won, it's like, let's go. Because the government is like a big old steamroller. They're a little slow to get going, but once they're rolling, man, you don't want to step in front of that thing. And, DAs always think you're going to ask for a continuance. You're like, no, let's do it. Let's do it. I really thought the defense would have had something or would have cross-examined her more like, oh, wow, that's a real interesting story, Ms. Crystal Lee Kenny. But the easiest way to get somebody in trouble is to simply tell the facts of what happened because you were there and you just put Mr. Frazee as the person that did it. But, because you wanted to kill her, you were going to kill her. You say you chickened out, and the fourth time you actually did it. And, they could have done something with the timeline. So I was surprised. It seemed like the defense was a little more of, I don't think they proved it yet. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
Well, and I asked a lawyer friend of mine, about that. When I called him up right afterwards. He's a lawyer down in Colorado Springs. Shout out to James Newby. I asked him, I said, man, it doesn't seem like they're defending him. And he told me, he said, it's one of two things. One, Patrick hasn't told his lawyer anything, has literally said nothing to his lawyer, said he didn't do it, said just lied straight to his lawyer. And the lawyer recognizes that he's getting lied to, that this is like, he just sees it. And so he's like, I can't, he has to defend the guy because that's his job. That's the law. He's due a public defender. Or Patrick told him the truth and said, yeah, and the lawyer said, well, we'll do our best. Maybe they'll mess up. Maybe they'll be able to give us throw us a bone that we can catch.
Yeah, but even if Frazee had told the attorney everything, said, yeah, man, I did it, but do what you can. The defense can go in there and argue reasonable inferences and say, oh, you did this, you were there, you could have been there during that time, that frame time, you did it. A defense attorney get up there and cross-examine them on that.
They
I was a little surprised they didn't.
Any lies.
Yeah, which is
tried to.
Yeah. So.
And I thought that was interesting too because I understood she was a witness. This wasn't her trial. She already had her deal, and I know that they are protective of the witnesses, and they're not going to let you berate the witnesses and stuff like that. But yeah, there was just no real questioning of Crystal's story, and to this very day, I don't know if it was, hey, the only way we're winning this is on an appeal that we can, because there were some things that happened early on that even Judge Sales was like, this verges on a constitutional right. Like when they were trying to hold the police affidavit from Patrick and they weren't trying to get him the arrest affidavit early on, there was some stuff that happened where the Judge Sales was even like, I have to release this because of constitutional right. And the DA is like, give us a couple more hours. But we knew that they were trying to protect witnesses. And then later, obviously, the hit list would come out. It's shaken Woodland Park. It's fun to see the locals talk about it now. It's fun. I've had conversation with locals about it, and it's weird to see the locals take on it because how quick it went. The news blow up, and then it's kind of sucked down. People were still not even aware. They were like, oh yeah, that Patrick Frazee thing's done. And that was even before Crystal had been sentenced and stuff. And so people they did a good job of pushing it through, like you said. I think that it could have worked on his behalf. The problem is he had Judge Sales, and Judge Sales, man, laid down the sentence for sure.
No, I understand. So, hey, Michael, why don't you give us a quick plug of all your YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, whatever you got, we'll put a link to all your stuff.
If you Google Dad with a Phone on Facebook, YouTube, or TikTok, you're going to find me. We talk everything, true crime, but we also do regular podcasts, comedians, celebrities, celebrity dog trainer I had on. So, we live in a time when everyone can have a story, and I choose to tell my story through these YouTubes and Facebook Lives and podcasts I don't write books. I don't write blogs, but we do videos, and we'd love to have you over in the community. I got a couple questions for you. I want to ask you before we go.
All right.
Go ahead. We're short on time because you got stuff going on.
That's all right.
So, would you have defended Patrick? Would you have taken him if he called you up and said, "Hey, I need a lawyer"?
Sure. Yeah, if I didn't have an ethical conflict, like I had represented a witness or something along those lines, previously, everybody's entitled to a defense, and if they could pay for it, yeah. Or if the court called and said, "Hey, would you represent this?" I have no reason not to. So yeah, I would.
Yes. How does a lawyer at what point, like morality, if you know you're defending the guy, it's almost like if you win, you how does a defense attorney get a murderer off? Because I'm sure you've defended guys who were guilty, but you got them off. How does that work?
Well, I've talked about this before. It's not that somebody got off on a technicality. That technicality is a constitutional right, and the burden's always on the government. So if the burden, is always on the government, and they the case winds up with the not guilty, it's not the defense's fault. It's the prosecution. They failed to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, sometimes that, wow, maybe justice wasn't done. You maybe want to go home and, take a shower with a wire brush just to try to get clean, so to speak. But, that's the way the system works. Our system is set up with the philosophy it's better to let 10 guilty men go free than one innocent man be wrongfully convicted. And so, that's the way it works. People get, whether it's a traffic ticket or a homicide case, DAs dismiss cases. They can't prove it. Their witnesses disappear. That's the way the system works. It's designed to it's set up that way versus the king saying you're guilty, and we'll give you we're really going to punish you. So it's the way the system works.
Yeah, lawyers. You got defensive lawyers and criminal defense lawyers always get a bad rap.
We're the most hated people in the world until somebody needs us. And I guarantee you, whether it's, the individual or a family member or a close friend, somebody is going to be in a situation at some point in their life, or their family or their friend, that they're going to need a criminal defense lawyer. It happens. Stuff happens.
What's the future for Crime Talk in this channel? You just going to stay at it and keep going, or do you got plans for 2020 to do things?
Well, Crime Talk, it's fun. I really enjoy doing it. I hope that we provide some information more than what you get on the, evening news with their 30-second blip. And as you explained, somebody reports something, you're like, man, were they in the same courtroom as I was? Because that's not what happened at all. And usually it's because people don't necessarily know what just took place from a legal standpoint. And so, that's what we try to explain. I try to be obviously as truthful and accurate as possible. And the beautiful thing about, YouTube is if you misquote something or say something, somebody will correct you.
They're going to bomb. They'll bomb on you.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, if, I wish I could do, Crime Talk stuff all day long. But, I gotta make a living. We have employees that, need paychecks and things like that. And so, unless maybe I had, a couple million subscribers, which would be the coolest thing ever. I still got to do my day job.
Push that subscribe button.
Yeah.
No, I understand. A report came out this year that the ad revenue from YouTube was more than ABC, NBC, Fox, and CNN combined in 2019. And I was like, well, it's the biggest channel in the world. Those suckers need to start paying out them checks so that people.
Yeah, but I don't know what happens to you, but we put a video up and suddenly it gets demonetized and we have to, request review. And 3 days later, they're like, oh, yeah, your video is just fine. I keep trying to explain to YouTube, we're not talking, something that's not appropriate for the evening news. but they automatically, I still think it's if you mention, like that guy in New York, I'm not even going to mention his name. If you mention that guy in New York that is on trial, or the guy in New York that, suicided himself, then I think YouTube just automatically shuts you down. We put up something yesterday and we actually tested it and thinking maybe it's our keyword that we're putting in or something. And because they literally demonetize everything we put up. And then they come back 2 days later and say, oh yeah, it's cool. But of course you missed that blip. So, YouTube's killing us. And I don't know, they get the views, but they don't have to pay anything.
Yeah. My biggest thing on that is I did that early on, fought with that stuff early on. I've just completely say, whatever, take it. I don't need your money. And allow people to give when they want to give. And I equate it to I'm a street musician out on the street. If you've enjoyed the last hour that you've watched, throw some money in my hat. Give them an opportunity to do that, and I've done it that way. I don't think I'm ever going to turn around and make the millions off that, but people will give. I've seen it too much, and if people will like watching, they get after it and give. And so whether it's through Super Chat, whether it's through a PayPal donation or something, but YouTube is definitely one of the largest channels out there. I think it's because they have Dad with the Phone and Crime Talk Scott Reisch on, but that's just my take.
Or Dad with the Phone.
Oh man, hey, thanks for having me on.
Hey, no, it was great. If I'd known you'd been in Denver, we could have just done it in person. And
I messaged somebody on Facebook. I was like, man, because we were trying to get out, I didn't have my Mac on me, and he was like, FaceTime. We ended up doing it through Zoom, but I was like, I'm in Denver, bro. I'll speed up there and come to the studio if I need to.
Yeah.
But I would love to talk other cases with you in the future. I'm looking into a closed cold case, Mindy Lee case, and Mindy Lee was found dead on the football field 10 years ago in Woodland Park, and we have just received the entire crime report, crime scene photos, autopsy report, autopsy photos. On top of that, her mother had recorded all the lawyers, all the police, all the interaction she had 10 years ago, but she had never released that. Her mother has released that to us, and we're trying to get that case reopened and looked at because they ruled it just a hypothermia case where a woman sat down on a football field and died. Bobby Brown, the bail bondsman, looked into it for 9 years, but he didn't have these recordings that we can listen to the police chief talk to her mom for over 2 hours and explain stuff. I'm also working on a couple other cases and a Gannon case. So as these things continue, I would love to talk with you in the future. Yeah,
absolutely. And if you as you're doing your research or whatever, you have any questions of, what it means or what, feel free to give me a call. And next time you're in Denver, let me know. We'll sit down and we'll just have a conversation. We'll cut out the video.
Yeah, get off this technology out of the way. Hey, again, thank you, Scott, for having me today. It's been a pleasure, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. I appreciate you taking time, Michael. It was good. Thank you.
All right, man.
Talk to you later. Bye.